So the first day that I joined Figma, I remember I was sitting in a presentation and Dylan was kind of walking me through stuff, showing the product. And the name of the tool at the time was actually called Summit. And I remember I thought to myself, like, this just isn't going to work. Metrics are so important, but I feel like when you're doing something really early and you're like, I have to 10x this, I have to 100x this, I have to 1000x this, you kind of have to go more on intuition and more on feeling, I think, and really believe that. Because metrics just aren't going to get you the answers that you're looking for. If you joined Figma, you had to start spending time answering support questions. And so it sounds like pretty unscalable, right? Oh, you have your engineers sitting there answering support tickets, fixing bugs. Like, you can't do that forever. That doesn't scale. But actually, it does scale. You think about people as companies. And I think the biggest advice that I would give is, like, people are people, right? And I think you see that at Config. Like, you'll see people and you'll talk to them and you'll be chatting. It sounds so basic, right? But, like, I think so often in marketing, we split people into, like, you as a person at your desk and you as a person outside of that. Whereas we try to think of people as one person. It wasn't like, let's have a community-driven strategy. It was just, we need to listen to our users and we need to build a product that's going to be really useful for them. And they know what their problems are more than we do. And we need to spend time with them and fix their problems. Hi, I'm Claire. I'm the Director of Brand Marketing here at Figma. I was also the first marketer, and yeah, I've been here since the beginning. So coming up on 9 years at Figma. So it's really fun for me to see everything come together today.
My name is Cory. I'm designer advocate here at Figma. I'm based in Tokyo, and I've been here at Figma for about 2 years, but a long time Figma user and community. As a designer advocate, I'm part of our community team. My role is a mixture of helping build community, but while also helping enable designers.
So could you give us an overview of your career before joining Figma?
Sure. It's kind of funny. It's hard to remember a time before I was at Figma because I've been here for 9 years. I was at another startup before that called Climate Corporation. And Index Ventures was one of the investors in Climate Corp. And we got acquired. And, you know, I kind of knew a big company wasn't for me. And I really wanted to roll up my sleeves and do something early stage. So Danny Reimer, who was the lead investor over at the last company I was at, also invested, was the first seed investor for Dylan. So I was meeting a bunch of different startups and different companies. And Danny introduced me to Dylan. And I met Dylan and kind of just decided that was it. And that's went from there. When I started at Figma, you're pre-launch. So there wasn't even a product. There wasn't a company. There wasn't even a name, honestly. We were going to name it something else in the beginning. So I think back to just how much we've grown and evolved over the past 9 years and where we are today. And it really blows my mind. It's just so amazing to see the excitement. I just got emotional watching all the people come in and just how much Figma means to so many people and how many people love it and use it every day. It's just a surreal moment for me to see everything come together.
What was the first thing that you did after you joined Figma?
Literal first thing I did. So the first day that I joined Figma, I remember I was sitting in a presentation and Dylan was kind of walking me through stuff, showing the product, also showing me where the bathroom was, like all of the basics that you get on your first day. And I saw one presentation where they were going through some of the branding for Figma and some of the different naming and how they were thinking about launching it. And the name of the tool at the time was actually called Summit. And so Figma was always the name of the company, but we had the strategy at the time where the tool would be called Summit and like the Figma editor. And then that company would be called Figma. And I remember I thought to myself, like, this just isn't going to work. Like, nobody knows who we are. Summit is just like a really basic name. There's PCs named Summit. There's apps named Summit. This isn't anything we can own. And so I remember saying, just kind of off the cuff, like, hey, like, how locked is this? Is this something we can change? And Dylan was like, yeah, what do you think? And I was like, well, I really think we should probably only have one name. We can't really have two. And he's like, well, how about you think about that more and make a presentation and maybe you can show everybody it and then we can talk about it. And I said, okay, cool. Like, what does the timeline look like for that? And he said, how about tomorrow? And I was like, okay. And so I remember the literal first thing I did on my first day was make a presentation about how the product should be called Figma and not Summit. And that was the first thing I did.
When Figma first launched, people saying, especially among designers, like there are a lot of people liking the product, but also saying, oh, if this is the future of design, then I would quit design. Or like, this is not the future I want as a designer. So as a first marketer at Figma, like what were your like go-to-market strategy, or like how did you deal with these market response?
I think it's really interesting because as a marketer working online and collaboratively, it's just intuitive to me, right? Like was used to using Google Docs, was used to just having Google Slides, Asana, these things where you just have things constantly updated and working really collaboratively. But it didn't really click for me until I saw the response, honestly, that, before design didn't really work that way. People were used to working in these offline tools and sharing when they're done and doing these like beautiful presentations and showing kind of more of a finished product. And so, there was a lot of questioning of that in the early days. I think that there's a couple things that I keep in mind when I think of like how to approach something like that. The first is, you have to have a level of confidence that you're going to keep going anyway, right? Like there's some people who don't like it. There's different adoption curves. And it's okay if not everyone likes your product right away. So there's just having a general confidence in that and a belief that that's the way to go and that's the vision and we're going to stick with it is very important. And then I think the other thing that we did that was really, really helpful was we really looked at design as an interesting space where, people really learn from each other. And so people are always looking to other influencers or other people to help understand, what's the latest in design? How do you work? How should we work? So we really built a lot of relationships and focused on building relationships with people who had a lot of thought in the space, a lot of thought leadership, and talked to them about things. So even if they had a negative reaction at first or weren't sure about something we were doing, we just engaged in conversation and talked about it. And, over time, heard their opinions. We shared our opinions, got feedback from them. And that was a really important thing where maybe initially people had concerns, but as we built trust with them, built credibility, people started using the tool. That was really important, and they changed their minds.
I'm also curious, Cory, your response when you first got to know Figma. But as a designer, didn't you have any like mixed feelings towards the product, or as a designer, like what were your thoughts on the product?
As a designer at the time, I was using Figma. This was probably like 2016, 2017. It's like a lot of different design tools were coming out. Like, every week seemed like there was different design tools. Like, and I was, using one tool as my main tool, but like I would be using another tool, beta testing it like on the side and like recreating the design like every week and testing, these A/B testing these design choices to see like which one is going to be the best one, which one I switched to. And like through that whole process, like one of them I found was like Figma, and I was using Figma and I picked it up for a bit and I was like, okay, this is web based, this is kind of interesting, but like it doesn't make much difference compared to like what I'm using now, right? And then I went back to it for some reason again to use it, and I started thinking about the collaboration features. Right, I was just like, wait, you can just it's web based. You can just share a link. I don't have to like export this, and every single time it's my final version. Send that again, and then I could just share that, and it's always up to date. And thinking about like the repercussions of that, of like how that would change the way people interact, and just reduce the friction. I think this is just a big thing I think about a lot of time in the process. So I was like, oh well. To realize the value that I actually have to use this tool with somebody else. So that the first thing I did was, okay, let me find some other people on my team that I can get in the tool and let's use it together. And then once I did that, they understood it. I understood it. I was like, okay, this is a game changer. Once you start using it together, you just realize it's like, it's a completely different experience. And I think that was when it was clicked. And then I realized that. And then I was like, oh, I need to get my whole team on this. I need to get everyone in this and get everyone in the file. Before I was like, going to introduce my team to it, there's actually an issue with like Japanese input. And back in the day, like you still have it today. In the bottom, like right corner of Figma, there's a little question mark right there. And if you push that, you can send a message, right, to the help desk and get support on that, right? So I was using Figma, and when you input the Japanese characters, it wouldn't show up correctly. Japanese input was basically broken in Figma at the time. I was like, oh, yeah, this is great, but like I'm in Japan and like I'm designing in Japanese, so I can't use this on my team until this is fixed, right? And I was like, maybe I'll just try to send something to support and see what happens, So I told them, I sent them some screenshots. I said, hey, I sent a detailed request and I said, hey, this thing is broken here. If you could fix this, this would really be helpful for your Japanese users, right? And then a couple weeks go by and I pick it up again and it's fixed. And I was like, wow, this is pretty nice. I was like, the tool's pretty cool, but I was like, what was really, really cool was like, oh, I gave this feedback and then they fixed that. But also I know that like they're accepting feedback from the community, and the speed of that iteration is something that it gives me confidence in it. So I think like changing tools is like an investment for the whole team. That was kind of me weighing the option, it was just like, okay, I'm really kind of investing in this team, and I'm going to tell my team we should use this product.
So you joined Figma before the product launch. How did you approach marketing a product that was still in stealth mode?
So I was the first marketing hire, but I was also the first just go-to-market person. In the beginning, when we didn't have a product, I would go around and drive around Palo Alto, San Francisco with Dylan, and we would just pitch Figma to different teams. We had a bunch of connections in different design teams, and we would just go there and we'd show them the product. And so a lot of what I did in the early days was meet these people, gather their feedback, kind of like what Cory was saying, in that more of a one-on-one setting, and hear what they thought about the tool. And then we were really trying to understand, okay, when are we ready to go out at stealth and launch the product? And so a lot of what I was doing was trying to understand, are teams ready to adopt this? And is the tool good enough to launch? I think it's such a balance that you have to think about, where it's like, okay, we want to get out of stealth and want to get this in people's hands. But if it's not good enough, then it's also like, well, we're going to lose our chance. You only get one shot to launch.
And what were some of the factors that made that decision?
Yeah, it's hard, right? It's such a hard question for people, because you really do only get one chance to launch the product. And you want to do it right. And so you want it to be good. When people are all going in and looking at the tool, you want them to have a good experience. So that's on one hand. But then on the other hand, you don't want to wait too long, right? Because the team had already been building the tool for years before I got there. If you want to keep things going, you want to start building with people and getting their feedback. And so it is a really hard balance. It's definitely more of an art than a science in terms of, when to launch. And I remember I was sitting in this meeting and someone literally took the laptop out of Dylan's hands because they wanted to play with it. I don't think that they didn't mean to didn't take his laptop, but they were just like, that's so cool, I have to try it. And I think once I saw people starting to do that was like, okay, this feels like it's kind of ready. One of the biggest challenges that we had in terms of deciding when to launch was multiplayer wasn't actually done when we launched Figma. It just was going to take another year for multiplayer to be done. And so that was a really hard decision at the time, where it was like, this is our most important feature, arguably, and we know it's going to take another year before it's done. And the decision that we had to make was, do we launch without multiplayer or do we wait another year? And we decided just to go for it and to launch and to start getting feedback, start getting it in people's hands, keep it in beta, even though we knew it wasn't finished. But that is such a hard challenge, right? I think there'd be a lot of good arguments on why you should wait for the core feature to be done. But it definitely becomes kind of more of an art than a science at that point in terms of making that decision, because you also just got to keep the momentum up too. Metrics are still important, but I feel like you can't really look at them that closely when you're in a micro setting like that. You kind of have to go on anecdotes, right? We didn't have enough people to have these metrics dashboards and be like, look at the usage over time, right? Honestly, we were meeting these teams, and what we looked at was at the beginning, can we get one team to transfer full time? And it sounds so funny because it's our metric was 0 or 1, right? It's not like you're looking at these dashboards. And that's why I feel like sometimes when you're doing something really early and you're like, I have to 10x this, I have to 100x this, I have to 1000x this, you kind of have to go more on intuition and more on feeling, I think, and really believe that, because metrics just aren't going to get you the answers that you're looking for.
What were your team or your plan or strategy on building this community, and how important was that at the time?
I wouldn't say in the beginnings we ever set out to have a community-driven strategy. It kind of to parallel Cory's story with what was happening at Figma at the time. In the early days of Figma, that little question mark button that Cory was talking about, we didn't really have a full-time support team, or it took a while for us to do that. And so our engineers would rotate and answer those questions. And so it makes a lot of sense that somebody reported a bug and that Cory reported a bug, and then one of our engineers saw that and just fixed it, right? That's just kind of what happened. It was really all hands on deck. And Dylan, our CEO, really believed that we need to be as close to the users of our product as possible. And so even now, up until a long time ago, or until recently, if you joined Figma, you had to start spending time answering support questions, because he wanted people to know and understand what the problems were and be really close to what that looked like. So that's been integrated and woven into who we are since the beginning. And along with that, it's really building the product alongside of the users of the product. It wasn't we thought to ourselves let's have a community-driven strategy. It was just, we need to listen to our users, and we need to build a product that's going to be really useful for them. And they know what their problems are more than we do. And we need to spend time with them and fix their problems. And there's people like Cory. Like Cory was one of those people that went into the chat, but there were thousands of other Corys. That idea of listening to people and then having a personal relationship, really becoming close with them, and then having them go spread Figma to their company, to their communities, to where they live. That's just what we did at scale. And so it sounds like pretty unscalable, right? Oh, you have your engineers sitting there answering support tickets, fixing bugs. Like, you can't do that forever. That doesn't scale. But actually, it does scale because Cory, once we empowered him, he converted his team. He grew a community in Tokyo, right? Like, that has a huge amount of ramifications down the line. And so that's what that strategy looks like when it does scale, right? It's how these people who you really build these strong relationships with, then spread Figma for you. That's the whole crux of a community-driven strategy. The advice I would give is focus on a niche, because it's so hard to be too broad, especially when you're new and you're early and you don't have a brand yet, and find out who your users are and have somebody who really understands them be the face of what you're doing. We definitely started with designers. You were very focused and had very specific niche of designers. They wanted someone who really understood their pain points, what they were going through, what it was like to design. And that's when, for me, I realized that immediately. And I was like, I don't know this. I can study it. I could try and learn my best. I have over the years, but at the end of the day, I'm not a classically trained designer. It's not my core expertise. And so that's when I decided, I was like, we have to hire somebody who knows this really, really, really well, and have them be the face of this, and have them be the people who are talking with users, who are creating content, who are checking all of our marketing, who are helping us do things. And that's when we decided to have a user from the community come join the team. And that function is scaled.
How did you come up with this idea of having like an offline community, and how did that scale also?
Totally. So in the early days, we did meetups. And so that's what it looked like at the beginning. Some people were skeptics in the beginning, right? And maybe they'd want to go to meet other designers, or they'd show up. But we realized how valuable it was to bring people together and to talk. And we just saw how amazing it was. Well, people just learn best practices from each other, and just learn from being together. And we were able to build these one-on-one relationships. We could kind of overcome some of their concerns, or talk them out, or just kind of hear people out on why they were skeptics or why they weren't sure, and how we'd have these conversations. And it might be, I remember one, Tom was in Seattle. Tom, our first designer advocate, was in Seattle, and he was talking to somebody who at the time was a very big skeptic, right? And then he kept talking to them, have these relationships, built this relationship with them. Turns out they were at Uber, and that person then brought Figma to Uber, right? And we saw the power of how that process worked. And we started growing just these people and having these relationships. And then we had this thought of like, well, wait a minute, we've been going to these different cities, these different places. What if we brought everyone together, right? And what would that look like? And it was really funny. I remember when we first had the idea, we were like, okay, how big should it be? And it sounds so funny, and I laugh at it now. It was actually, we thought we were going to be 200 people. And that was going to be the conference. And we even booked a venue for 200 people. That was the size. And we launched the conference. And then the first day, we had so many registrations and people who wanted to join that we were like, okay, we have to change the size of this thing, because there's no way 200 people is going to work. And so we expanded it. And so the first config was 1,000 people. We have all these relationships. People have these connections online. And because of just the distributed nature and the global nature of design, people have been talking to each other on Twitter for so long. But then they all came together in person, and it was just pure magic to see these people. I remember so many that the line in the conversation was like, oh, that's not what your avatar looks like on Twitter. Because there's a strong community that existed, and that people were already meeting each other and talking, that we've been doing from these meetups, but also just from the nature of a design. Designers have been talking and learning to each other regardless of Figma for so long. And so bringing everybody together in person and having these relationships that were just online and happen in real life was just so magical that we just knew we had to continue as.
So do you have any advice on building communities for early startups?
Totally. I think the biggest thing is that sometimes in especially for us in, enterprise marketing or B2B marketing, you think about people as companies. And I think the biggest advice that I would give is people are people. right? And I think you see that at Config. Like you'll see people and you'll talk to them and you'll be chatting. And then you look at their badge and you're like, oh, you work at a really big company. Oh, that was a company that in theory you might want to like target for sales. But that's not how we think of it. We're just like, you're just a person and you have interest. Like it sounds so basic, right? But like I think so often in marketing, we split people into like you as a person at your desk and you as a person outside of that. Whereas we try to think of people as one person and you can just, you're yourself all of the time. And sure, you happen to work in a company. But I think it's doing these things that don't scale and building these relationships one-on-one, like Cory and Cory's example. And then those people bring other people and then that's how word of mouth really spreads.
So Figma is beyond just a product. It seems like it's a brand, it's a community. So what are your advice on making a brand?
I think that the most important thing is to actually start with the product for us. And that's like what product-led growth looks like, right? And I think that what we have as a brand really starts with a great product by starting from the bottom up and saying like, okay, first we have a really strong product. That's awesome. We're improving it as we go. We're listening to feedback as we're building it and building it with the community. And then second, we have, these relationships with people and those people love the product. They're spreading it to other people. And that's growing over time, a community of people. Then we can do the brand, right? And then we can say, okay, now we want to layer on top all these other things like a 10,000 person conference or like, all of these beautiful visuals that we have.
The story of Figma is not about ending at Figma. The story about Figma is where does Figma get that person to? And in most cases, people using Figma, their story is something like, I just want to create great products. I want to enjoy the process and create that product together. So the narrative that we're creating on the community side is often like, how do we just enable those people to get to where they want to go?
Do you know where the name Figma comes from?
It would be great if you can explain it to us.
It comes from the idea of a figment of your imagination. And the initial vision of Figma was to eliminate the gap between imagination and reality. Like that was the vision. And so it kind of shifted for a while there because some people told him it was too ambitious. And so it was make design accessible is kind of where it went to. But as we grow and as we continue to evolve, it always comes back to that. Like how can we get better at, as a tool, helping to eliminate that gap and make it so anybody can have they have ideas in their head, turn it into a product or turn it into something that keeps the world.